I call this meeting to order. This is a Livingston Parish Ordinance Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, January the 31st, 2023. It's a few minutes after 6 p.m. Let's stand and just have a quick word of prayer. Dear God in heaven, we just thank you for this beautiful day, Father, and just thank you for allowing us to gather here and just do the work of the parish, Father. Tonight we just ask specifically that you be with those who have lost loved ones in their life, Father. That's a tough time when you lose somebody you love, Father. Just be with those families out there, Father. And in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
All right, y'all. We're going to do roll call.
Mr. Mack.
Here.
Ms. Sandifer. Here. Mr. Wascom.
Here.
Mr. Dillett.
Here.
We're all.
All right, y'all. Old business, I guess that'd be agenda item 3A. That's a discussion of the kratom regulations and prohibitions ordinance. We're going to be discussing whether or not we should ban kratom in our parish, the sale of kratom in our parish. And so just to start it off, we'd like to see if there's anyone that would like to come up and speak either for or against banning kratom in Livingston Parish, the sale of it. All right, just don't forget to state your name and address and all that wonderful, beautiful stuff.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Ryan Burrows. I'm the Executive Director of the American Kratom Association, and our offices are based at 13575 Heathcote Boulevard in Gainesville, Virginia. My name is Ryan Burrows. I'm the Executive Director of the American Kratom Association. We represent over 11 million kratom consumers in the United States, including an estimated 200,000 consumers here in Louisiana, as we advocate for good regulation on kratom products. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm encouraged by your consideration for a good regulatory framework to protect the Livingston Parish residents' access to safe and pure, unadulterated kratom. When I spoke before this committee 2 weeks ago, I highlighted some key statements and decisions that I feel are important to quickly mention again. The FDA has attempted to schedule kratom 3 times, and each time these efforts were struck down. First by the Drug Enforcement Administration, as well as Dr. Joie, the Assistant Secretary of Health. Additionally, the World Health Organization, after reviewing all of the science available today, concluded that kratom does not meet the criteria for international scheduling in a 12-0 vote. Today, Secretary Becerra of the Department of Health and Human Services says we cannot proceed with a ban on kratom. Equally as important, Dr. Nora Volkow, Director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, has expressed great interest in kratom for harm reduction as well as decreasing effects of withdrawal and depression. The scientific understanding of kratom has changed significantly. Research funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse has shown that kratom has a significant harm reduction role for those who struggle with addiction that often leads to deaths. That science has informed the discussion about the safety profile of kratom. When pure, unadulterated kratom is used responsibly, it is not dangerously addictive, nor does it cause deaths. NIDA research, the FDA claims that kratom caused deaths and concluded those deaths were from polydrug use or adulterated kratom products. The important issue we confront today is that a Livingston Parish consumer can purchase what they believe to be a pure kratom product, and after consuming it, notice it has a different, more powerful effect. They are duped into thinking it is a better product. Growing markets attract that interest of the bad actors who adulterate kratom with fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine. Those powerful drugs do produce the euphoric high that is the signature of opioid products. A little dose of these drives kratom sales to consumers who just think it is a better kratom product. The truth is, pure kratom does not produce any reinforcing euphoric high, and if you take too much of it, you simply regurgitate and feel sick to your stomach. We have to protect your constituents and ensure that safe, unadulterated kratom is available. Pure kratom is not the problem here. The Kratom Consumer Protection Act is the answer to this problem. 7 states have enacted the act. Additionally, the federal Kratom Consumer Protection Act was introduced in December in the United States Senate by U.S. Senators Mike Lee of Utah and Cory Booker of New Jersey, and in the U.S. House of Representatives by Congressman Mark Pocan of Wisconsin. For the residents of Livingston Parish, who use this plant for its energy boost and increased focus, or for relieving anxiety and reducing feelings of depression, those consumers need to be protected from dangerously adulterated kratom products just as much as those who use kratom to replace dangerous opioids. The Kratom Consumer Protection Act regulates kratom effectively and says kratom products need to be manufactured using good manufacturing processes required for food products. Kratom cannot be adulterated with dangerous drugs that would put consumers at risk for serious adverse events or deaths. None of the component parts of the kratom plant used in a kratom product can be synthesized or artificially enhanced, including the metabolite 7-hydroxymitragynine that in its natural occurring form is safe, but dangerous when synthesized. All kratom products must be labeled properly to allow consumers to know all of the ingredients, including the recommended serving size and number of servings in the package. Kratom should be restricted for sale to minors. And finally, the burden for enforcing the enacted regulations on kratom should be on the kratom processors, not Livingston Parish taxpayers. Again, I'm here to work with you, and I appreciate the opportunity you gave me to come speak to you again tonight, and congratulations as well to the new members. So, thank you.
Appreciate you coming very much, Mr. Ryan, right?
Thank you, Councilman Mack.
We got a few questions for you.
Great.
Randy, you go first.
Yes. Thank you for coming up here and trying to educate us on this. It's new to me. The previous ordinance committee has thought about this long and hard, and they have a lot of information in front of them that they passed on to us.
Okay.
But I want to understand your organization. Who you representing?
We represent the consumer advocates that consume kratom.
Okay. When you say the consumer advocate, who pays for that? Do we have growers growing kratom that pays for you being up here to talk to me?
No. All of the kratom would be grown in Indonesia. We don't partner with any grower groups.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking, and just because I'm new on here and coming forward back, I know what consumers reports are, or consumer advocates. You know, I just can't, I've researched some of the stuff about your organization, and I just can't find that readily available on Google or anything. Can you tell me a little bit about how many members your organization is, where do y'all go, and what's your goal? You talked at the end that you okay for regulating kratom. I heard that come out.
That's why I'm here, because we are absolutely wanting to help you with a regulation rather than a ban.
Okay, but I don't think you answered my question yet. How does your organization get their money to educate the public?
Certainly, no. Through our grassroots efforts, we have several 100,000 members that contribute to us, and that's what gives us the opportunity to go and speak before councils like yourself.
Do you have a directory of those members? Are there any members in Livingston Parish?
We do have members in Livingston Parish. Some of them
members?
Spoke at the meeting 2 weeks ago. Yes, sir.
Okay, and I wasn't here.
Understand.
Okay. I'm going to yield the floor to the chairman.
All right, I just got a couple of questions. It's to my understanding, you said that kratom, when adulterated, is harmful to society.
Right.
Okay. And I heard you also discuss some regulations. You were here to help us regulate it. But
right.
I guess the question is how does a local government with limited resources, if we were to regulate it, how would we enforce those regulations?
So through your where I've seen this work, maybe through your law enforcement groups, would do spot checks on the facilities that sell it. So if they're finding products that are not packaged properly, sometimes you may find kratom sold in a bulk type of situation that would need to be reported. There's other ways to look at this as well, in that if someone were to report a adverse event that they felt was caused by a kratom product sold in your parish, the burden would be put back on the vendor for that product to then finance the funding for the testing, any blood reports that would need to be done. And
I mean, this is all new to me too, but I just got a couple more questions. So if you were to regulate it such that you allowed, over 21 and older
right.
to purchase this pure kratom, how would you prevent it from being adulterated with other drugs and preventing others from overdosing?
Well, that would be at the council level. What would be sold in the state, or I'm sorry, in the parish?
Let's say it was sold as pure, and I'm not trying to cut you off. I'm just saying, if it was sold as pure, it was allowed to be sold as pure. How would you prevent society from cutting it and mixing it with other drugs and causing, citizens to overdose? I just don't see how, if you allow the sale of pure kratom, to me, you don't stop the problem. It still can be cut. It still can be mixed with other drugs and still be very, very harmful to all the people in Livingston Parish.
I understand your concern, but if the right regulations are put in place, our research shows that vendors do not want to be in areas where the regulation is, because they don't want to do business in that area and deal with a potential for fines or legal threats and action against them.
Okay, anybody else got any more
I
questions?
got any questions? I do, if nobody else.
Go ahead, Randy.
If you regulate kratom, have you ever had any court cases where they was overturned or said you couldn't regulate it, or they overstepped their bounds, or any of those things? Can you just name us some places that has regulated kratom? I know places that have banned it, but I don't know of any that has regulated it.
No, absolutely. And on the state level, we have 7 states that have regulated the sale of kratom: Utah, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Oklahoma, and Oregon. We're active in about 23 states this year. 3 of the states that have banned kratom are working with us to overturn the ban and put regulation in as well.
How many parishes have regulated or banned kratom in Louisiana?
I'm aware of Rapides and Ascension have banned kratom, and we're hoping to continue conversations with Ascension to put regulation in place after talking with the Sheriff's Department.
I may be speaking out of turn here, and I don't want to tell anybody's person's problems, but I know of a Ascension Parish councilman that was openly about his drug problem, and he was against kratom. Okay.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Ryan?
I have a question. In other states, do you know how many other counties have banned kratom? Not states, but counties.
This county of San Diego and Sarasota, Florida as well.
And that's nationwide.
There are some others in Alabama as well.
I have a question. So help me understand. So a ban, is that the ban of the sale or the use or the possession?
That would be your decision.
Okay.
That we wouldn't advocate for a ban.
So my other question is a regulation. So can you give me an idea of what your recommendation of regulations? You regulate to age groups that are buying it? You regulate
Correct.
to hours of sale? What do you call good regulations for kratom?
The base of the program, we haven't seen hours become an issue, although that's a good question. But they, would need to be manufactured using GMP processes, as any food product in your parish is required to maintain. And that should be registered. More to your question too, Councilman Mack, that should be registered with an office in this parish, and these vendors that come in would have to supply that documentation as well on an annual basis from a GMP standpoint.
So let me follow up with what you're saying. So when you say regulate, you're really referring to regulating the quality of it, or
the quality,
the purity of it.
Of course, yes.
That's what you say. And as far as the time and the age and the locations, that's all up to the states and the parishes.
We advocate for an age, 18 or 21, because we just would feel that you're more educated, so that you're not consuming this product with.
So y'all advocate that as part of a regulation as well?
Yes, the age, proper labeling, proper packaging, the GMP requirements would be in there as well. The important part with this is that the products can't be synthesized, so that the alkaloids can't be altered in any way to give it a spike or a boost, which is one form of adulteration as well.
Let me ask you one more question. Are there any places where it is regulated that it's able to enforce? Can that be tested, or if someone is thinking, look, this particular is not, it might be laced with something, or GMP or whatever.
GMP.
Is there testing that's available for that?
Yes.
So I guess law enforcement goes and tests. If they get called, they would go test.
If you choose, or we would suggest you put that burden on whoever's
On whoever's selling the product.
Whoever's product it is.
Just like if you have a water well, you have to sample the water and go get it tested before you can put it in our water system. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we would advocate with you on that, too.
Okay.
This shouldn't become a taxpayer issue for you all.
I don't have any more questions right now, but I'm sure we will. If it's my understanding, we currently, right now in Livingston Parish, have no regulation, no ban. You could buy it, use it, possess it, any time of the day, any day of the week, any age. Am I correct in saying that? So
I believe some stores have put in age limits voluntarily that I know of, but
I guess if they sell alcohol or something, they have a 21.
They may default to that,
yeah, okay.
or if they have other products with an age requirement.
Is there, so currently it's just, there's no regulation and there is no law that the parish has against it, but there may be some people here tonight that could tell us why there needs to be a law. And would you mind sitting with us?
I hope I've answered your questions in regards to the regulation on that. So.
I appreciate that. I just got one last question for you. So I was reading where it is possible for, different I guess you could say humans have the ability to absorb and I guess you could say process certain dosages of this kratom product, whereas a lesser dosage, taken, absorbed by, a different human could OD, could have major consequences to taking this stuff. I've read that. So do you agree with that, or do you not agree that that's possible? I thought I heard you say earlier that there's no possible way to OD on this stuff. I've read that you can.
In a typical addiction type of profile, your body cannot process it. It cannot metabolize the active alkaloids in the plant. So it just, you simply would regurgitate the product if you took too much. I hope I'm getting to your answer, Councilman. But,
okay. If we don't have any more questions for Mr. Ryan, I guess we'll appreciate you. If something else comes up, we'll call you back.
Thanks so much. I'll be here.
Appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, does anybody else want to discuss this? Go ahead. Let's get them first, or second, or third. Just don't forget to state your name, and I know you probably know the protocol, but it's just for the record so we can put it in the minutes.
Paul Scheck-Snyder. I'm from Denham Springs. So a lot of these bans and issues with kratom, they all get brought up as public safety threats. And I'd like to discuss what the real public safety threat is, and that is not legal access to kratom. The real public safety threat is a ban on kratom, which will force thousands of consumers back onto the streets to take their chances with fentanyl, heroin, and fake pills, and back to the real life of crime to support that habit. Whereas kratom keeps all that from happening, and we all know it. Let's look at statistics. This is from Dr. Kirsten Smith of the National Institute of Health peer review article published she reviewed 2,798 kratom users. All right, this is from the National Institute of Health, Dr. Kirsten Smith. She states in this peer review, of these participants, 91% reported taking kratom to alleviate pain on an average a couple of days for back, shoulder, or knee pain, 67% for anxiety, 65% for depression. About 41% of the survey responders said they took kratom to treat opioid withdrawal. And of those people who took it for opioid withdrawal, 35% going more than a year without taking prescription opioids or heroin. Both prescription and illicit opioids carry the risk of lethal overdose, as evidenced by more than 47,000 opioid overdoses deaths in the United States in 2017, which I'm sure that number is going up tremendously now, which I believe Livingston Parish had 41 overdose deaths last year. Notably, there has been fewer than 100 kratom-related deaths reported in a comparable period, and most of these involved mixing with other drugs or in combination of pre-existing health conditions. So I did a quick Google search of crime from prescription medication in our area, including pain pills, fentanyl, and other legal stuff, which is Livingston Parish, arrested with fentanyl, heroin, crystal meth, everything. The list goes on and on and on. That's the real issue. I would show you crime and destruction from kratom, but I couldn't find any. I couldn't find a single article. If kratom is such a menace to society, then why are you council members just finding out what kratom is? I'm sure you 100% absolutely know about everything else that I described in these papers, about the heroin, the fentanyl, everything else that you're combating in this parish. I've heard the same from Ascension Parish and Livingston Parish. Even WBRZ agreed that the police they spoke to have never heard or never had any issues. And with y'all trying to ban kratom, which is something y'all had to Google and find out about a week ago, I guess, because most of the council members that I spoke with absolutely have no clue what kratom is. And if it's such a big menace, then y'all would know about it, correct? So, and what I'd really like to encourage, and they do have law enforcement here, and I would like to encourage you to contact the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, which is LEAP, and I have their information with me. And they are made up of staff commanders from major agencies across the country who have briefed legislators on the public safety threat. A ban would bring forth through the community a big crime wave for real drugs. I will share this with you. This is Tent Mountain. I fought in Afghanistan, did 2 tours. So I will share with you while fighting in Afghanistan with the Tent Mountain, I combated heroin directly. I patrolled through poppy fields used by our enemies, killing my fellow servicemen. I was directly against the heroin and those who profited from it, and then to come home and see the epidemic. Kratom fights the fight against heroin and drug addiction. To take this from me and so many servicemen that use kratom is a direct slap in my face to my sacrifices by fighting in Afghanistan and to my fellow servicemen. I say before you ban it, you really need to think about what this is really doing to the community and helping people. And just really do your due diligence. And with this guy right here, Ryan, with the KCPA, that he advocates for the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, it's a wonderful thing. And I take kratom. I've taken it for 3 years. My wife takes kratom. She was on Lexapro, a list of prescription medicines too, for severe depression, for suicidal ideology. And pulling a 40 cal pistol out of her hand because she was really suicidal is a scary thing. And to watch her take kratom and the depression, the anxiety, all the issues she's dealt with, to be completely gone with. My PTSD I can deal with, manage, to become a functioning member of society. I can truly tell you this stuff works. And I do know firsthand, as a company that me and my wife do operate, we do lab tester stuff. We send it to Murray Brown for adulteration, heavy metals, bacteria. So we do absolutely know that it's 1,000% safe for the consumer. So I mean, there's multiple ways to do this in the right aspect of things without just taking a banned approach. And I do know that there is agenda with pharma, you know what I mean? Kratom's taking a lot from people that use prescription medicines, treatment centers, all that. I mean, I got documentation I can deliver to y'all and show you some things.
Randy's got a question for you.
Yes, sir. Just on your personal opinion, you said your wife was using it. Where do y'all buy it at?
We used to buy it from vape shops, gas
You
stations.
buy it in Livingston Parish?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Have your wife tried, there's different kinds of alternative medicine treatment, you know, using the flower. It's legal in Louisiana. Any doctor can bring you. Have you tried the other medical marijuana?
No, sir. No, sir.
That is regulated.
It is
And it seems
regulated.
like it does the same thing kratom's supposed to do.
Yes, but marijuana also makes you kind of non-functional.
Okay.
So with kratom, it's actually, you can still be functional, take care of my 2 children, duties that we have to do, run a company, everything. So
Do you know of any doctors that's ever prescribed kratom?
I do know of a couple council members, I mean, not council members.
If you do, don't tell. No, I'm picking. I'm picking.
I do know of some counselors that do prescribe it to their clients and has great effects with it. And I can share the information to you if you like to.
And I probably will later. We'll continue this discussion. That's all I have with him.
Appreciate you, Randy. I just got one question for you.
Sir.
So you agree that kratom should be regulated and the government should regulate it?
I do agree. I do agree, and that's with anything. And I know most of the vape shops and gas stations take it upon themselves. It's behind the shelves, and you're only allowed to buy it if you're 18. In some places, 21. And I know with our packaging, we put 21. So none of our customers can even buy it if they're below the age of 21. And we work with vape shops, and it's on our packaging. So, I mean, they're not selling it to people that's under the age of 21.
Appreciate you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for providing that input. Is there anybody else that would like to talk to support this? I'm gonna get you some. I'm gonna get you.
Hi there, my name is Adam Peak. I'm the owner of Bella Sunrise Smoke Shop in 6010 Jones Creek Road, Suite D. Mostly all I'd like to offer today is my personal experience, 11 years with kratom. If you were there, I believe I saw you at the last meeting, sir. I told you I worked there for over 11 years and I've owned it the past 3. It's one shop. We've run it strong for roughly that same time period with no alterations in the product and similar, or just running through the same consistent wholesalers and manufacturers. But much like it's been stated earlier, if I can't get it from them or if they're out of stock, there's a bit of fear behind any adulterated product. It can be laced with anything from tianeptine. I've seen products spike with dangerous levels of caffeine, phenobit. Ultimately, though, in a form of regulation, or if you would decide to ban it, I ultimately don't think that would accomplish much of anything. Anyone truly willing to go after this substance, if you have access to the internet and you have an address, a PO box, it'll find its way to you. At that rate, we're just sending tax dollars out of the state. We're running the risk of them not being able to see the product in hand before purchase. I for one, would be very for regulation. My store alone, I'd like to say smoke shops probably are one of the most heavily regulated industries for good reason. But to the end of, if you come into my store and there's a piece of glass on my wall, I have to call that a water pipe. If I say the B word, I'm subject to a $2,000 fine. We now have medicinal laws in the state that seems like it would kind of breach over that regulation, but ultimately we're kind of held in this weird, tangled, kind of legal, kind of not, and consistency has become hard to find in my line of work. Barring that information, I would be happy to work with any foundation the state would like to offer to keep the product strictly pure, regulated, not just with kratom, but nicotine products, anything that's inhalable or ingestible. I would just want to find that corrugated path that allows us to move forward.
Appreciate you. Anybody got any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I actually am familiar with kratom, and the position or the slant that I'm coming from and what I understand about it is that it is natural medicine, and my first, what I knew about it the first thing I knew about it was that parents give it to their children as an alternative for ADHD medication, as an alternative for Ritalin and Adderall. Have you ever heard of that?
No, most of my customers consist of veterans, nurses, a lot of people who work early in the mornings, like landscapers, very physical laborers who utilize it as a means to stay active or would stave off withdrawal effects from not similar, but very dangerous substances relating to heroin, cocaine, meth. And in those 11 years, I, of course, take it too. I typically just use it as a hangover cure. If you ever go out drinking with me, you'll find I'm a lightweight. And the next day, I'm guaranteed hungover after 2 beers. About 4 grams of Kratom. I've actually taken some earlier today before this meeting just to show you how coherent. I don't really relate to any of the reviews about hallucinations on Kratom, but I do understand that metabolization plays a very special role in every individual. Certain veins aren't even as effective for certain other customers as they would be for me. It all comes down to finding what works for you in small dosages before you really purchase into anything.
Is it psychoactive?
Not that I've come across personally. This is strictly me speaking anecdotally, me. And I can't say that there's any customer that's come in, oh man, can you get me more of the Kratom, please? And that's never been a stipulation in my line of work.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question. And you would probably be the one to answer this. I didn't know, have a clue what it was when I saw it on the agenda. Couldn't even pronounce it. Does it come in like a pill form, or do you smoke it, or do you inject it? Or I know nothing. What is it?
I choose to take the powder with those naked smoothie blend drinks.
Looks like a BC powder?
Pretty close, I'd say. I don't really mess with BCB either, but Kratom.
BC powder. Never mind.
I still wouldn't be familiar, but essentially, it comes in capsule form. There are liquid shots.
Okay, so it's in any kind of form.
Yeah,
okay.
There's nothing inhalable that I've come across, though.
Okay. It's not like you don't smoke it, like,
No.
okay.
All right.
I want to know.
Anybody else? Appreciate you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Is there anybody else from the audience who would like, we have the Honorable Sheriff
He don't have to give his name.
Jason Orr here tonight. Appreciate y'all for coming.
Thank you for having me. Jason Orr, Sheriff of Livingston Parish. I, like you, didn't know about Kratom. What that young man said was true. Didn't hear about it about 7, 8 months ago when other sheriffs brought it to my attention. However, I brought with me tonight 2 guys that were very familiar with it and been fighting the streets every day for several years. One is my sergeant over narcotics, Cody Gyro. The other is my sergeant over the Criminal Patrol Division, which is Jeremy McCullen. I had to look at him. But these guys are on the streets every day. And look, we're tasked with one thing and one thing only: serve and protect this parish to keep our citizens safe. I understand there's a lot of things that go on when you, we've dealt with bath salt, we've dealt with all kind of things, and this Kratom is a growing issue in law enforcement. These guys don't make a drug bust very seldom without this being involved. The reason you don't see it in the paper is because it's not illegal. So they're not going to list it in the paper. So you do see your fentanyls, your cocaine, your methamphetamines. You're going to see that because it's illegal, and we can actually have a statute to put on it. You don't have that on Kratom. That's why it's an issue. We've already had a few deaths. I also have here tonight in his corner Ron Coe, and Joe Harrell's with him, his assistant coroner, and they could probably give you some information as well. Again, we're just concerned about our citizens, our kids, and this is a growing problem. And these guys are here because they're a lot more educated than I am with this. I'm not scared to say that because their job is to boots on the ground on the streets, and they deal with this every single day. We would love to answer any questions you might have about this.
Thanks a lot. Randy?
How do you test for Kratom in a person? Blood tests or breathalyzer? How do you test?
I'm up here for
We
now.
get it on. Something new for us too, as far as the coroner's office goes. So basically, when we send off for forensic toxicology on blood, that's when we're seeing it. So I just wanted to correct a couple of things from that was stated previously. We've had over 125 overdoses last year. not 47. So we do have a problem here in this community. And the other thing is, when I first started reading about kratom, I thought, okay, it looks pretty safe, what have you, and I think it is safer than most opiates and what have you, safer than methadone, heroin, and all the others. But by itself, it has caused death. And I have this, Carol, where they did 1,000 blood samples on some medical death investigations, and there were 3 deaths out of 1,000. Obviously, it's not a lot, but 3 deaths where it caused death by itself. It wasn't a co-ingestion. Over the last couple years, since 2021, we had 2 cases in 2021 and 1 case in 2022 where kratom was involved as a cause of death, but all 3 of them were with other drugs as well. One of the cases that we had probably had, like the gentleman previously stated, where they adulterated or cut it with other drugs, and tianeptine was in a case of a 2-year-old that died, and that death was ruled a homicide because obviously the parent had this stuff, wasn't supervising the child. It was neglect, so it was ruled, the manner of death was ruled a homicide. So, I do think, being fair, it is safer than a lot of narcotics that are out there, a lot of drugs, but would I want my 16-year-old getting it? Probably not, or using it. And I wouldn't want it to be flavored for sure. But anyway, we do have a problem in this community, and obviously these guys are seeing it more on the streets. When you're seeing guns and fentanyl and kratom, maybe it's a problem. I'm not seeing what they're seeing. So anyway.
Appreciate you. Go ahead, Randy. You got a question?
Just your professional opinion, Dr. Coe. Are you for regulation or banning?
I'm trying to just be the coroner and not.
I'm looking for professional, because this is a tough. To me, it's easy because the sheriff, his job is to provide our safety, and he sees it as a problem, so it's a no-brainer for me. But I also have a letter in my possession from a plant manager of a chemical plant. He wanted me to read this letter anonymous, and I won't do it if he can't put his name on it, but he's afraid he'll lose his job. So I could see the pros and cons, but the ultimate decision for me is what the sheriff says, because that's his job. He has to provide safety for us. But he's not a doctor, so I was asking your professional opinion. You are elected official, I realize that. Sometimes you got to say things you don't want to say. So,
Well, like I said, I always believe that care should be administered by a physician or extenders, physician extenders. That's probably all I want to say.
if a doctor can a doctor prescribe it?
There's no need to prescribe it.
So then it shouldn't be necessary.
It's out there publicly.
Appreciate you. Anybody got any questions? Go ahead.
Yes.
I heard you make mention of narcotic. Is kratom a narcotic?
It is sort of have a metabolite. So the thing is, kratom by itself has to be metabolized to be more sort of effective. So there are some individuals who it's rate limited. That's what makes it, they say, a little safer, because it's rate limited by an enzyme that we have in our body, to where the 7-hydroxy mitragynine is the one that could cause the respiratory depression. So that production of that active metabolite is rate limited by an enzyme that we have in the body. So if you take 10 grams or you take 100 grams, you're getting the same amount of that active metabolite in your system. However, there are cases where, and obviously I just showed you where they looked at 1,000 blood tests toxicology where people have died just from kratom by itself.
Matt, question real quick? Oh, go ahead.
So it slows down their heart rate, like a narcotic?
It probably has a respiratory depressant effect like narcotics.
Okay.
It could potentially have, yes.
And the 3 deaths that you mentioned, when you were expanding on that, I was reading the sheet, so pardon me.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand. Were those 3 deaths solely from kratom ingestion, or was it mixed with another?
Mixed with another drug.
Thank you so much.
You may have answered this, and did I understand you say, did you equate kratom with an opioid? Did you say it was an opioid?
It has some opioid. It works on those receptors. So yes, it basically works similar to an opiate. Yes.
But it's must be different than opium, I guess.
Correct. I think it's more similar like codeine or something of that sort. Obviously it's got some opiate-like properties to it.
Anybody else got any questions? Appreciate you coming.
So just to touch back on that,
Yeah.
in low doses, it acts as an opiate. In higher doses, it would act more like an amphetamine, so it can flip more of a.
It's the other way around.
Yeah, vice versa. The other way?
Yeah.
Lower
Low
dose.
doses, it's a stimulant. High doses, it's
Okay, yeah, 1 to 5 grams, it's a higher, as an amphetamine, and the higher doses is more like an opiate. It causes sedation, loss of consciousness in some cases, and things of that nature. The Food and Drug Administration, they have not approved kratom in any uses. And the research what they have discovered as of now is that some kratom products do contain contaminants, including heavy metals and harmful bacteria. What we see on the streets is people using kratom to enhance the effects of other illegal drugs already. So they can buy street-level drugs, which we do enforce, go buy another product off the shelf to make these illegal drugs more potent and give them a higher intensity. And the only other thing that I had to note on that, so from the Louisiana Health Department, Louisiana Health Department recommends that kratom is banned in general consumption in the state, with exceptions made only in the context of well-designed scientific studies with appropriate oversight, data safety and monitoring boards, and regulatory approval.
Right, appreciate you. Anybody got any questions?
Question I want to ask from anybody, if we ban kratom, are we talking about banning the sale, possession? Someone else asked a question earlier.
I'll answer that.
Okay.
Yes. The ordinance would basically say it shall be illegal for any person to sell the kratom. Of course, they list the scientific name of it in the parish.
So we would be enforcing just the sale of it, and then if it's in their possession, we would have to have something also, or just, should we ban, Sheriff, just the sale or also possession is what I'm asking.
I'm pretty easy. I'd say you ban it all. That's my
And I
personal
agree.
opinion.
I agree.
If you're going to do it, do it the right way.
I agree. That's why, okay.
They're going to get it somewhere else.
So it'd be the use and sale.
The use and sale. Thank you, Sheriff.
I wanted to give y'all this. This is from the DEA, just with some statements from them that I thought was important. Kind of highlighted there.
One part, and I want to address this to you, Dr. Cole, if I got the floor.
Yeah, go ahead.
One part, I want to help people if I thought this could help, but you kind of answered my question when you said that doctors, no need for them to prescribe. So if there's no need for them to prescribe it, why should I allow the sale or possession of it when not everyone abuses it, but it is potential for abuse? And normally when you hear abuse, it starts when you're young, because what happens is you watch your parents do it, and then you continue to do what they're doing, and then you may do a little more than what they do. So I can see those guys that risk their life out in the field every day. It's one less thing they got to worry about. I honestly see that. I want to make this something that we can enforce and make sure. I'm sure it is something we can do, but I don't know what regulation sounds like a good idea, but I would not know how to regulate the product. I wouldn't have the what it takes or the manpower or any way to do that. I wouldn't know how to regulate it. If someone needs kratom to live, I think they probably don't abuse it and they're actually using it to live, but they can find that somewhere else. And I feel like by removing kratom from being so easily accessible, that we can start, I'm not going to say knock out the drug trail, but somewhere you got to start. And the drug use is now a way of life in our society. No matter where you live, drug use, someone wants to abuse something, whether it's alcohol, some kind of drugs. And we're not going to be able to ban them all, we understand that. But I have a lot of confidence in our sheriff. I have a lot of confidence in what I see neighborhood parishes doing. And I bring back to what I said earlier. I know of a councilman that's openly about his drug addiction. He's cured now, and he was against kratom. And I know some people say that kratom is okay to use if you're trying to get off of drugs, but a person that's on drugs is there for a reason. He had something in his life that made him turn to a substance that he can abuse. If he was only hurting himself, that'd be okay. But that person, once he becomes doing this, then then he tells his friend, he said, look, it's legal, you can do it. He does it. The potential for abuse is so much more readily available. There's a reason why you can't smoke cigarettes or buy cigarettes until you're a certain age, or you can't drink until all those things. There's a reason why you wear a seatbelt. That's why government's in life, is to protect lives. Do we get it right 100% of the time? No, we don't get it right 100% of the time. But if we don't work at a problem, and maybe we may tweak it down the road, I don't know. But if the sheriff comes and asks me that and tells me he's got a problem, I'm going to work to help that sheriff. And that's where I'm at.
And I think, when we're seeing it with other drugs, which we commonly are, maybe there is a problem.
All right. I think that summarizes it. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? I mean, I think we got another agenda item we need to cover tonight. So I just want to make a short, quick statement about how I feel about it. I mean, even those in favor of, selling kratom, continuing the sale of and use of kratom in Livingston Parish, agree that it should be regulated in some fashion. My thought, I've made up my mind after hearing the testimony of all of you all tonight. I'm going to push to ban it. And if you all want to talk about regulating it in the future, I'm open to listening. I don't really feel like Livingston Parish government, whether it be the Sheriff Department or Department of Health and Hospitals or the Permit Department or anyone associated with local government, has the resources and ability to go, I guess you could say, monitor it if we regulated it to the point to where it, you had to have testing and ensure that testing was being performed. I mean, we just don't have, there's much more, in my opinion, much more important things that, the agencies in local governments need to be focused on. So that's just my opinion. I mean, do we have a motion on the floor to proceed with banning kratom in Livingston Parish, the use and the sale of it in Livingston Parish? Yeah, go ahead.
I do have a question, Sheriff Ard, about how will you, if it is banned, how will you police that in our parish? How do you know someone is using kratom or taking it? How do you determine that?
Periodically go by and check these stores, vape shops. The undercovers guy, they go in there all the time. So if it's in there, we'll know it's in there. We catch them on the street. in their possession. We'll find out where they got it from. It helps us to do our investigation, and if we have an ordinance that we can charge them, we'll be able to charge them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, hold on a second. So if you got something, we really need to move on to the next agenda item, but you're welcome to come on up and make one quick, short statement.
I think this is ludicrous. You got police officers standing up here reading paperwork that have no clue what they're talking about. Absolutely no clue.
But that's not
And it
disrespect
shows.
anybody in
All
this
right?
in this
So I'm a
chamber right here, right
law-abiding
now.
citizen.
I
A
understand
law-abiding
that. I
citizen.
agree with you.
You're just about to make me a criminal, is all I gotta say.
it's
And when I get arrested and my little 2 children, I gotta go do jail time, it's because of y'all, and that's ridiculous. Okay?
I'm sorry you feel that
I'll
way.
leave this for you, too.
I appreciate that.
Lifehouse Rehab, and you, Jason Howard.
Hey, you're probably going to need to leave right now, okay? What'd you say?
Recommendation that you'll be making to.
Yeah, do we have a recommendation to move forward with? Wait, I'm sorry.
One thing we probably need to clarify is this ordinance, municipalities are going to have to make their own ordinance. So I don't think we can make ours supersede theirs. So we
Yeah.
Ours is
just might
only,
need to clarify that.
yeah, ours is going to be the only rural area. What we have to know is what the penalties are. That has to be stated, I think.
I think that's a good point, Jeff. Appreciate you very much. It looks like, the Ascension Parish ordinance just straight up says in the parish of Ascension. So we'll get that clarified before we actually introduce that at the next council meeting.
So some of the municipalities have had this conversation.
I
Appreciate
want to
that
ask
very
Jeff a
much.
question.
Go ahead.
Jeff, and I know you sit on the board and you know how it goes. I don't. It's my first time here. Can we just make a recommendation to the full board without having this ordinance, and then you can do the ordinance by title? Is that right?
Absolutely. Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Hi, let me say something. The Ascension ordinance that I'm looking at, I guess that's where
The same one I'm looking at.
it just bans the sale of kratom. It does not ban the use or the possession of it. Now,
That's true.
let me go out and I think we need to put together an ordinance. If you want to do something, we need to put it together in its entirety and bring it to the ordinance committee before we just send it to the parish council, because
John.
that's going to be
John, if you look at this, this is Ascension Parish's ordinance. I mean, it talks about the penalties, it talks about the violation.
But it's-
It
look
does,
at-
it
look
does
at
make a
B.
general statement that says,
look at B.
they declare the use of kratom is a serious problem.
That's what it has, yes.
Ultimately, if you ban the sale of it, then you'll reduce the usage of it. And from what I heard tonight is that you'll reduce the, I guess you could say, overall amount of drugs being sold, because they're using this stuff to cut drugs so that they can sell more of the illegal drugs. You see what I'm saying? So to me, it's a huge win,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
You think if
I'm
we
going to push to.
ban alcohol, people will quit drinking?
Well, I will say that,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to-
I will say this, John, I will say this, I definitely agree that this needs to be regulated, okay, in some way, shape, or form. But we don't have the resources to regulate this, So my thought is we ban this stuff, and then if somebody like you or other councilmen want to work with some of the more professionals with the organization that Mr. Ryan's with to come up with some regulations, then maybe we can take a look at it, But, I mean, to just let this stuff go be sold, to minors, that really have no idea what they're buying and use it and take it, and to me, it's just a no-brainer. I'm 100% against it. I'm going to push to fight it. I
Mr.
don't have
Chairman,
anything else to say.
I feel like I can't make a decision on this tonight because I have not heard enough yet. And I'm coming at it from the naturopath world. That's how I know about it. So I have to look at this from as many angles as I can to get as much information as I can. I'm not ready to make a decision on it.
That's fine. That's fine. It can still be introduced on the next council meeting. We don't really have to have a
Well, I want to make a comment.
Go ahead.
If this board doesn't recommend this to the full body, I will have it on the agenda, and it will be done. The only thing I want to do is scratch out Ascension and put Livingston in it. That's the only thing I want to change.
I agree with that, too. All right, anybody else? We really need to move on to the next. Look, I'm going to tell you this. Let me help you out. Look, we're just discussing it tonight. We're not even going to, I guess you could say, vote to put it on the agenda. What I can promise you is this will be introduced on the next Livingston Parish Council agenda, okay? At that time, and even in between then, you can do more research, you can come to the meeting and get involved in the discussion before the council. This committee right here doesn't even have the power to ban it. The council, you need majority vote of the council to ban it. So at that time, there'll be 2 more meetings. They'll be introduced, there'll be discussion, you can come to that. And then when it's adopted, there'll be a public hearing. You can come to that and state your case. And it's in that, after that public hearing, we would vote to actually ban it and adopt the ordinance to ban it or not. Does anybody else want to make a statement? All right.
I make a motion, we recommend this to the full council with the addition, with the exception of Ascension Parish, we'd put Livingston Parish in the ordinance.
I like that, but I can't make motions as a chair. Anybody else want to make a motion?
Second's what you need.
Yeah, I mean second, my bad. Thank you for clarifying. I meant second. Does anybody else want to second his motion?
Not today, not from me.
Just to introduce it? I mean, it's just to introduce it so we can put the whole thing together?
You're going to put it on there, aren't you? I mean, you said you're going to put it on there.
We're putting it on there. Anybody want to second Randy's motion? Motion's died. Motion dies for lack of a second. That's okay, though. We're going to continue this discussion later. All right. So the second, I just want to say this real quick. Appreciate y'all taking time out of y'all's life to come up here and provide y'all's input. It helps us so much make the right decision. And all of y'all, just thank y'all very much. All right. So, agenda item 3B. This is zoning classification and modifications and nonconformities, nonconforming uses. I just want to start this conversation off by saying that, we're in the process of zoning Livingston Parish, right? I think some of us have already zoned their areas. And I'm in the process of communicating, with the folks over there in Council District 9 area. We're about to zone Council District 9 here in the next couple of months. When I was having one of my meetings, let me say that this was there was a lot of people at my meetings. There was a lot of questions that needed to be answered. This is very, very, very important to the people of Livingston Parish. And when I was at my meeting, one of them asked me, if they were zoned for future use, say they were currently residential and they were zoned for future use commercial, could Livingston Parish government come up there and make them take all their horses off their property that they've had for 20 years? Could Livingston Parish government make them tear their house down, because it was zoned commercial and it currently being used for residential? And, that was a very serious question. I don't think that would be right. I don't think any of us would, that wasn't the intent, and I don't think any of us would feel like that would be right. So I made a verbal communication that night. I said no, that existing use could continue, right? And, of course, as soon as I got that out my mouth, there was a highly intelligent gentleman asked me if I was going to put that in writing. And I made a promise that it would be in writing before I was adopted my district to be zoned. So that's what this is about. And so we've had some conversations about that in some council meetings and some ordinance meetings. And Mr. Gomez, who is a very loyal, helpful real estate gentleman in Livingston Parish, he just, he's very, just very professional, and he don't really take sides. And my impression is he's just always here to support and help. And so he actually came up with some, I guess, language, some wording to help the people of Livingston Parish so that, non-conforming uses, and we're going to talk about what non-conforming uses is, or non-conformities is, we're going to define it, how you could put it in writing to protect the people so that existing use could continue to be used, after your area was zoned, and that type of stuff. So let's just kind of run through this, y'all. The plan is this, y'all. We have it a verbal. We have written documentation of the ordinance, a copy of it in front of you, right? We're just going to discuss it tonight. If y'all want to make a motion, do we send it on to the council to be introduced? I'm planning on introducing this at the next council meeting also. But the plan is to get this in writing well in advance of the next council meeting, okay? So that all of y'all can take a look at this. This is very critical that the wording be, let's just say, worded correctly. You know what I mean? And you can have the next week or two before the next council meeting, take a look at this, digest it. If you got some serious concerns, it'd be good to bring those concerns up in the next council meeting. But the plan is to introduce it at the next council meeting, and then if we, I guess, vote to introduce it, approve the introduction, then we'll push it on to the next council meeting after that, and then get this adopted and make this an ordinance so that people will feel, confident that current usage today could be used tomorrow, okay? And there's some stipulations in here, but so anyway, let's just run through it real quick, and we'll kind of go with it like that. And you're welcome. I thought I'd just kind of read through the sections. You're welcome to stop me at any time. This is kind of informal, not quite as formal as a real council meeting. You know what I mean? And look, this doesn't have to be my way. I'm not trying to say, my way of the highway or anything like that. I just, like Mr. Gomez, just trying to work with the people of Livingston Parish, work with the council, work with everybody to try to deliver, the service and protect people's property rights, their current usage. And I think all of us wanted to. I think, me and Jeff had talked about this previously. So let's just kick it off here. What is a nonconformity? Okay. A nonconformity shall be defined as any use, lot, or structure that was legally established, but as a result of the adoption of or amendments to this ordinance does not meet the current standards of the ordinance. Okay? That's what it is. So go study that and digest it and see if you agree with that as being a definition of a nonconformity. Okay, 3 different types of nonconformities. We're gonna, I guess you could say, detail here. The first one is nonconforming uses. Okay? Nonconforming uses shall be those legally established uses of property that do not conform with the requirements of the zoning district in which they are located. Okay? Nonconforming uses shall be allowed to continue. This is where we're going to put it in writing. The nonconforming uses shall be allowed to continue and be transferred, but may not be increased or expanded. Okay, now we can talk about that and why that's in there and what that means and all that kind of stuff. Let me just run through the usage, all of the definitions first, and then we can come back and try to answer anybody's questions. Okay, non-conforming uses shall be reestablished, continue, or be transferred if the non-conforming use, wait, did I say non-conforming uses shall not be reestablished? Okay, here's where you need to pay attention closely. Because a non-conforming use shall not be reestablished, continue, or be transferred if the non-conforming use is discontinued for more than 12 months. And we can talk about that, if 12 months enough. Should it be 6? Should it be 24? Should it be 36? That type of stuff. But let me give you an example of what that means. If you have a piece of residential property and it's currently being used as residential and it's zoned for future use as commercial, right? Then this ordinance basically says that you're going to be able to continue using that property as residential use forever. And it can be transferred. Like, say, for instance, you put it up for sale, the buyer wants to use it as residential, even though it's zoned commercial, the usage can be transferred in a sale. When a residential piece of property that's zoned for the future is commercial, would not be able to be discontinued as if it was like abandoned, or you walked away from it for 12 months. That's basically what this is saying. You got a house, you walk away from it for 12 months, you abandon the property, it's zoned for future use commercial. Well, then after that amount of time, then it's zoned commercial and future use will be commercial. So let's talk about that, understand what that means, and let's make sure that, when we finish this, when we vote on this, that we agree to that, right? Okay, just last thing, we mentioned that the other night, and some others came up with said, well, what if a hurricane came, natural disaster came, or a flood came, and it took them more than 12 months to reestablish? Okay, let's talk about that. I put a sentence in here. We're going to get some legal opinion to make sure this means what we are interpreting it to be. But basically, it's also going to say that non-conforming use shall be allowed to be reestablished. It can continue, and it could be transferred indefinitely if the non-conforming use is discontinued due to a natural disaster. Now, I thought about that after I put that in there today. We may want to say transferred for a certain amount of time. I don't know, maybe 5 years instead of indefinitely, because the way I'm thinking at the moment, indefinitely means that it could stay that forever, regardless if it was abandoned again in the future. You know what I mean? So I think we need to put a time limit on it. Y'all think about what y'all think's fair. Let's talk about it. We can modify this. Go ahead, Randy.
Basically, I like everything I'm looking at. The 12-month deal, to me, is a long time. And I know what you said about natural disaster. To me, abandoning means that you started something differently than what it is. It doesn't matter if you had a storm and you're not in operating, to me, that's not abandonment. I don't see where the last part has to be in the last one you did, to help people in natural disasters, because it doesn't matter if it's a natural disaster or anything. It doesn't say you have to be in operating, and it just says you can't abandon. So after 6 months, if you're not open because of a storm or whatever, it shouldn't matter, okay? You still have your business. But after that 6 months, you can't come back and say, now this beauty shop is a residential, and try to go back, or this residential is now a snowball stand or whatever, I think 6 months is a long enough time to abandon something. In my opinion, abandonment doesn't occur unless you walked off or you tried to make another business out of it. To me, that's abandonment.
That's possible. Let me give you another example. And look, we're just talking here. Shane Mack don't know everything, but this is what came to my mind. I had a gentleman, he's got 20 acres or so, maybe 40. He's got a lot of cattle. And he's got cattle on the property right now. But the property, I guess you could say, is adjacent, or it runs along a state highway. And the future plan use is commercial. Well, he asked the question, well, if I take my cows off the property, can I put them back on? He's zoned R1. I'm sorry, I messed that up. It's really agricultural, but he's zoned R1 for future use. R1 doesn't allow for agricultural animals, something to that effect. I can't remember exactly what it says. I said, well, until we get non-conforming use in writing, no, you can't bring your cows back. Well, I wouldn't support that. I don't think any of us would. So this is a way of saying, hey, if you take the cows away, you sell the cows, I don't know, maybe the price of cow beef goes up, you sell the, I don't know, 40 head of cows, but then 6 months later you say, I'm gonna go buy me, the price is low, I'm going to buy me another 40 head and put them back on the property. This is going to allow you to do that as long as you do that within 12 months. Now, just think about all of it. I'm not saying we got to go that route. I'm just saying.
Well, what I can't
You could
understand,
keep one, that would be smart, but
what I don't understand is, if it's zone R1, why is it using it as agriculture? Why
well,
isn't
its current use is agriculture.
well, why doesn't he zone it as agriculture, and then this wouldn't even pertain to him?
That's a great question. The thought is that he wants it zoned R1 because he don't want his kids to have any problems subdividing it into 1 acre lots in the future.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And look, we're just talking through this. You know, we're just discussing it. You know, think about all of this over the next week and a half. This will more than likely be introduced on the next ordinance meeting. There may need to be a few little minor tweaks in here. If we decide it needs to be major changes, then I guess we can just defer it or whatever. But I think it's pretty good so far. The intent's here. The intent is even though you're zoned for the future, you know, Livingston Parish government's not going to have the right to come, you know, stop your current use, you know, of how you're using your property, or tell you can't live in your residential structure anymore or anything like that. I think this is important to get some of that in writing. Okay. Next thing is non-conforming lots. And it's pretty simple on non-conforming lots. It just basically says non-conforming lots may be subdivided, developed, and permitted to conform to the requirements of the zoning district in which they are located. So if you have a lot, say, let's go give an example. Make sure that my interpretation is what others is actually interpreting this. But basically, say you have the same example. The man's got 20-acre lot. And like Randy said, it probably should be zoned agricultural, but it's along a state highway. All the property adjacent to it's all zoned R1, residential. He wanted his kids not to have any issues in the future if they wanted to subdivide into 1 acre lots and everybody get a piece of property. So basically, he's non-conforming because he's got the cows on it and it's zoned R1. If he goes to zone that in the future, then the minimum lot size is going to be 1 acre, right? But that's basically what this is saying, you know. And so it basically, I mean, it just says non-conforming lots may be subdivided, developed, and permitted to conform to the requirements of the zoning district. So if it's zoned R1, it's got to be 1 acre lots unless you can get a waiver or something. I mean, think about that. I'd like some input on that, you know, to make sure it's written and interpreted the way I understand it to be. But that's basically what that is.
You want to send this to the council
I do.
for an introduction? Well, I'll make
I
a
do.
motion, we send this to the council.
I'll second.
Okay. Well, that's a great idea. I just had a little bit left. Y'all ready to adjourn?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not.
I wasn't quite finished. I had one more section.
Well, here's the two and all.
It's really, really important. I'll go fast as I
We'll hear your
can.
whole story at the council.
I'm gonna go fast. I know why y'all got rid of me as a council chair. No. Non-conforming structures, though. That's the last section. I mean, on non-conformities. You know, we talked about non-conforming use. We talked about non-conforming lots. Now we're going to talk about non-conforming structures, okay? Non-conforming residential structures shall be allowed to continue, be transferred, and may be permitted to be enlarged, extended, reconstructed, or structurally altered as long as the residential structure has not been discontinued more than 12 months. What does that mean? Well, my thought what that means is if you have a residential structure, I don't know, a house, and say it's zoned commercial, and you want to add a mother-in-law suite on the back. Well, basically, this is going to allow you to do that. Okay? You can remodel, you can add on to, any of that, as long as the property has not been abandoned for 12 months. You know what I mean? At that time, if it was zoned commercial, then the property's going to be commercial.
It's not clear to me, Mr. Chairman, so if you don't mind, explain it one more time. I'm telling you where I'm getting confused. On
Go
the
ahead.
non-conforming residential would mean to me that it's now currently zoned as commercial?
Well, yeah, okay, so I'm sorry. Non-conforming residential structures would be if you were zoned commercial and it was a house. That's what it means to me, okay? So if you had a house and it was zoned commercial or industrial, right? And you wanted to, I don't know, remodel the house or add the mother-in-law suite on the back, this in writing is going to allow you to do that.
But it would only pertain if it was zoned incorrectly.
Well, if it was zoned, yeah, non-conforming. If it was zoned R1, well, then it conforms.
I was wondering why we needed that. So it's possible that you have something zoned commercial and it
Right.
needs to be residential, but instead of zoning it correctly, we pass an ordinance to deal with non-conforming? Is that what we're saying?
No.
No?
I'm saying that there's property zoned for existing use in Livingston Parish. This is just to the best of my knowledge. And there's property zoned for future use. I have a lot of my area zoned industrial and commercial. It's because of the corridor, you know what I mean, on the interstate in 190.
I understand
And,
what you're saying.
yeah, if you got a residential house and it's right next to Weyerhaeuser, which is zoned industrial,
Right.
we don't want somebody to not be able to remodel their house or add on to their house. If it, you know what I mean, protecting their current use.
What I do see in this, Mr. Chairman,
Go
is that that will put down on cut out a lot of discussions and things when people come up here and say, my property's not zoned, where I'm zoned at, what I got to do. And that's a lot of headache and work and trying to do that with the, so I like what you got proposed.
If you keep it like it is, you're going to be able to keep it like it is forever.
That's right. I like it proposed that way.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay. Now let's talk about this. Non-conforming residential structures shall be allowed to continue to be transferred and may be permitted to be enlarged, extended. Basically, it's saying the same thing. If it's a natural disaster, then you can continue the use and enlarge it and all this kind of stuff forever, indefinitely. We probably need to change that wording. Whatever we decide to put up here, for this non-conforming use, continuing, even though it's been discontinued, say it's after 12 months, we probably need whatever we decide up there, that just needs to be duplicated down there. And then the last thing I want to say is this, and you need to think about this. I think this is the way it ought to be. Non-conforming structures. Now, we're not talking about residential structures. We're talking about just non-conforming structures. What are you talking about? Commercial building, okay? Non-conforming structures other than residential may be enlarged, extended, reconstructed, or structurally altered, provided that the extent of the nonconformity is not increased or expanded. What does that mean? Well, my thought is say you got a laundromat, okay? It's not a residential structure. Say the area is zoned industrial. Well, or say it's zoned industrial. Well, you're not going to be able to expand the laundromat. It can stay the same size, and you can use it as a laundromat forever, but you're not going to be able to expand it, make it bigger.
And why wouldn't you do that, Mr. Chairman? Why couldn't you? Why would you stop someone from expanding a business?
Because maybe it's a non-conforming use. That's not what the future use or planned use for that property is.
But I thought we earlier said that they were grandfathered in, so why would I penalize them because their business is successful?
I don't want to penalize no business that's successful, but what I'm saying is we need to think about whether or not we want to continue the use of structures, not residential
Where's
structures.
that section at?
It's at the very bottom.
To me, it's simple, is you zone your property for future use or any use you want to, and what's already in there is grandfathered in. You know, I can't tell a car wash that he can't operate here no more.
Oh,
He's
but
got
now
too
let me
much
ask you this.
investment.
Okay, I hear you. That's a good point.
And when you
But
say,
what if, let me just ask you.
I'm asking you,
Okay, you go first then.
when you say increase, do you mean they can increase the size of their building?
That's true.
Even though they're on their own property, still
Now, look,
doing
I'm
what-
not saying it's got to be this way. I'm just saying, think about it. You're right. That is what this means. But, and this can be modified, this can be changed. I'm glad y'all are asking all these questions. I'm glad we're understanding this together. Okay. Say, for instance, I got a laundromat, right? Right next to Weyerhaeuser, right? And the laundromat's been shut down for 20 years, and it's zoned industrial. Well, the future use of that property, that's future planned use is industrial. It's not planned for a laundromat, commercial laundromat. If you wanted to build a laundromat, you're going to have to come before the council, get it reclassified as commercial, and then you can do it. It's not saying that you can never, ever, ever, ever do it. It's just you're going to have to reclassify it because that's not the future planned use.
But if he's got his laundromat and it's working and he's next to Weyerhaeuser, and all of a sudden he wants to put an extra lean-to on the back, extend the back for to park another car to come in or drive-through, you saying that he can't do that?
Well, now, Shane Mack's not saying he can't do that. I'm saying that the way this is written, he can't do that. So if y'all don't like it that way,
Who wrote this?
well, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus right here. I already told you who wrote this.
Okay. Shane Mack?
All I did was tweak it.
Okay.
I like everything with the last part, Shane.
Okay. Come on up, Mr. Gomez. Maybe you can do a better job explaining them why this is.
Realtors Association. You probably can maybe eliminate the word residential in the last part and just apply it to structures. What's more likely is going to happen is that you've got this little operation has been operating as a little corner grocery store, something like that. Everything around it's been R1 or whatever the zoning is for residential, and they want to continue to operate. Well, they should be allowed to continue to operate unless it's abandoned for a period of time, then, it's got to revert to what the zoning is for what you say it is on the map. You can put some restrictions like, you don't want to stop them from expanding altogether, but you can say like, you can't expand more than like 25%. Because you wouldn't want a situation like you've got a 1 acre piece of property they've been operating like a little motel, like 10 rooms on this motel. So it's surrounded by residential. You wouldn't want to have a situation where they can take that motel and turn it into a Days Inn with 75 rooms on it. So you wouldn't want to expand, without any restriction at all. But you may want to put a percentage or something like that, either price-wise or square footage-wise.
So can we just say as long as you stay in the same footprint? Wouldn't that make more sense than?
Well, let me ask you
and that
this.
would allow you to make that move that John was talking about if you stay.
Let me ask you this. So say for instance, Mr. Gomez gave a good example. You might want to put a restriction on there, say you can only expand 25%, or say you had a concrete plant and it was surrounded by residential property, all these big nice houses around it. The future planned use is residential. Well, if they want to expand the concrete plant, and make it bigger, if you don't put this in there, they can. It's a lot to think about. Just keep thinking about it. We can talk more about this. We could even defer it from putting it on the next council agenda. But I'm just saying, you got to think about all the scenarios and what's best for the people and the businesses, of course.
Like everything with the last part.
And we can talk about that. Let me say this. If you do limit, the reason I separated it into residential structures and just structures was because I felt like that you could have a commercial business surrounded by a residential area that should not be expanded, because that's not the planned use for that area. I don't know if that exists, but it's a good possibility it does. The reason I separated it was because I did not want to limit a residential structure and prevent them from having the opportunity to expand by adding a mother-in-law suite or whatever. You know what I mean? Maybe they want to put a trailer on their property for the kids in the backyard or something, you know. So just think about all of that, reread this, ask questions. We gotta put something like this in writing. Like I say,
I'm saying the footprint's got to stay the same, but they can use the property like they want to.
Now, explain what that means. That might be a good point. So, okay, so footprint. You're going to have to define footprint. What do you mean?
If he's got a 2-acre parking lot and a 3,000 square foot building, if he wants to make a 3,200 square foot building using his parking lot, I shouldn't interfere with that.
Okay. And look, you know, I kind of feel the same way. I'm just saying he could always come back and get reclassified.
Well, if he's going to get reclassified, we don't have to do none of this.
Well, you'd have to, well, no, not necessarily so. If you think about it, I don't know.
I thought about it, so I'm not making a motion at this time.
We don't have to make a motion tonight. I really never even intended that. You know what I mean? And I want to say this, too. This is just how I feel. I don't think there's a written law on it. This is a great committee. We get together, we talk through things, we fix things. This is wonderful. You know, we invite the public and everybody, and we make good decisions to protect our people, good quality of life for our people. We're going to have ordinance meetings on Tuesday, bi-weekly, as much as possible. I don't want y'all to feel like if you got something going on, you can't miss, okay? So if you can't make it, it's not a big deal. You know, this conversation is definitely going to continue on into the council meeting. You know what I mean? So hopefully you'll make it there. If we only have 2 ordinance committee members here, you know, in the past we would just like leave and say, well, can't have a meeting. I don't agree with that. We're going to invite the public. We're going to come up here. If we only got 2, maybe 3, we're still going to have a meeting. We might not have a quorum. We might not be able to take a vote and actually, I don't know, vote to, you know, introduce it on the council agenda, but we're going to have a meeting. We're going to continue working through problems. We're going to continue fixing things. I just kind of wanted to give you an opportunity to where if you can't make it, you know, this is not, just don't feel bad about that. You know what I mean? Because we're going to continue on. I've got some ball games coming up in the future. I might not be able to make it. We're probably going to need to get us a co-chair because, or maybe we just cancel the meeting, but my little girl's a cheerleader for Albany High, and they're going to be making state playoffs here soon. I probably won't want to miss those games. So.
Where at?
Albany High.
Albany.
I appreciate that, and I think that the public would appreciate having the discussion too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shay, Mr.
Yeah.
Mack.
I agree.
It's really about getting it right and listening to the public. It's, like you said earlier, we can put this on the agenda without even making a nomination, a favorable nomination. So anyway, that being said, appreciate everybody for coming tonight.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second? All in favor? Aye. All right, team.
Randy, you good to go?